Diablo 2 is often considered the pinnacle of the Diablo series, with some of the best class identity in the ARP genre, as well as being able to go against all three of the prime evils in one game, which we haven't seen since. Now, we know what happened to the three heroes from Diablo 1, but one question keeps coming up is, what exactly happened to the 7 heroes that took down the 3 prime evils in Diablo 2? In this video, we're going to talk about each of the different classes, their origin, and what they all got up to after the destruction of the worldstone. First off, we're going to talk about the Amazon named Cassia. Cassia is the canonical Diablo 2 Amazon that we play as in the game. And one interesting trivia, it is said that when the group of heroes entered Tristram, Cassia was the one who specifically freed Cain from his cage. Now, Cassia is what's known as an Ascari warrior, which are known as Amazons outside of the Scovos Isles where she hailed. Now, the oracles of the Scovos Isles predicted that evil would return to Sanctuary, and upon the darkening of Tristram, where the Dark Wanderer left Tristram in shambles, that was a sign to Cassia that all her training is now going to be paid off in pursuit of the Dark Wanderer. Now, after the defeat of Baal and the destruction of the worldstone, Cassia returned to the Scovos Isles among her Ascari people. Now, the oracles there stated that this isn't the end of evil on Sanctuary, and it is bound to come again. Due to this, Cassia was convinced that the Ascari people would need an army. So she began training her fellow Amazons immediately. Due to her determination, she blazed through the ranks and became their most legendary commander, receiving the rank of the War Matron. This rank is so prestigious that the Amazon Queen Zera herself blessed Cassia with her own armor. Next up is the Sorceress, and her name was Isendra. Isendra and her fellow sorceresses hailed from a female-only mage clan from the eastern continent named the Zan Esu clan. They're considered one of the oldest mage clans, and their pursuit was to find the purest form of magic. As such, they focused primarily on elemental magic and shunned everything outside of it. Following the events of Diablo 2, where Isendra joined up with her fellow heroes to topple the prime evils, she returned back to the Zan Esu clan and became a master sorceress, where she taught apprentices in her order. One specific apprentice comes to mind, and that apprentice is named Li Meng, who you will know as the former sorceress and wizard in Diablo 3. See, both Isendra and Li Meng started to desire expanding their knowledge of magic beyond the elemental kind. This was deeply frowned upon, not just by the Zan Esu clan, but also from the other mage clans as a whole. As such, one of the elders of the mage clans named Valthek monitored both of them quite closely. Things only escalated from here though, as Isendra's rebellious and arrogant nature only grew, and she tried to use this new magic, the arcane, to help people in villages surrounding her. And this all came to a climax when Isendra, in her attempt to stop a drought to the east of Chaldeum, she ended up losing control of her spell and killing many of the denizens as a result. Because of this action, the mage clans had enough and deemed Isendra to be too much of a risk. As such, they sent a Vizjakar assassin, which is an order designed to police the mage clans, to go after her. And unfortunately, that assassin did succeed, and Isendra was killed. After Diablo 2, the only time we see Isendra in the games is in Diablo 3, when the wizard encounters her spirit in the Pandemonium Fortress, where she did indeed confirm that she was indeed assassinated, but she didn't really care and only wanted to be freed from Malthael's grasp. Speaking of assassins, next we'll talk about class number 3 from Diablo 2, and that is the Assassin. Now, the player character Assassin, their name is unknown. However, we do know a little bit of history behind them. See, the Assassin hailed from a group called the Vizjatar, which was formed during the Mage Clan Wars. The Vizjatar was formed specifically by the Vizjarai clan to police the magic users, and particularly to enforce the banning of the forbidden summoning of of demons that began the Mage Clan Wars in the first place. The Order sent an assassin to investigate the darkening of Tristram and to chase down the Dark Wanderer. As such, she teamed up with their fellow heroes in Diablo 2 to vanquish the Prime Evils. Now, we do get one named former Viz Jatar assassin, and that is Natalia, who we encounter in Act 3 in the Karas docks. And Natalia is then represented in the Demon Hunter set armor in Diablo 3. Now, we don't know what happened specifically to the assassin player character in Diablo 2. She could have possibly been the one hired to unfortunately take out Isendra, her fellow sorceress, but that's just speculation. Moving on to number 4, we have the Necromancer Zul. Zul is the name of the canonical character, and Zul, like other necromancers who refer to themselves as priests of Rathma, hail from the jungles of Nahantu. Now, after Zul and fellow heroes took out the primevals in Diablo 2, he went back to the priests of Rathma and took on multiple different apprentices, as he was now considered a master necromancer. One of those apprentices is named Matan, who we end up meeting in Diablo 3. Matan admits, although he is now a master necromancer, he will never surpass or really beat up to the accomplishments of his master. We first encounter him in Diablo 2 in the side quest The Restless Sands, where he mentions that he failed to take on powerful spirits and asks the Nephilim to help him out. And he returns in Act 5 in Westmarch, where he helps to combat Malthael's Reapers. Now, Zul's second apprentice, who went quite awry, was named Lethis. Now, Lethis, like her master, was born with an incredible natural affinity for necromancy. However, Zul found that Lethis had quite the broken moral compass and a blatant disregard for life. As maintainers of the balance, necromancers are meant to respect both life and death. As such, Zul gave Lethis a painful reminder of her duties. After this incident, Lethis decided to leave because she felt like she was being held back for her potential, and in fact believed that her master, Zul, was jealous of her natural talent. Now, we end up meeting both Zul as well as Lethis in Diablo Immortal. Zul mentions that his apprentice, Lethis, is trying to empower herself with a worldstone shard that she achieved. And with this shard, she summoned masses of undead in the Ashwold Cemetery and outside of Warthound. And the reason she wanted to do this is she wanted to resurrect Leoric, which she succeeded to do because Leoric was resurrected by Diablo's latent magic, which she wanted to tap into. Now, Zul and the player character managed to defeat Leoric and catch up with Lethis, whom they battle and defeat. However, Zul noticed that upon Lethis's defeat, her body explodes and there really is no remnant, which makes him believe that she is still alive and what we defeated was just a simulacrum, or in other words, a puppet body. Next up at number 5, we have the Barbarian. The Barbarian is unrivaled in delivering relentless melee fury on anyone foolish enough to greet their axe. And growing up, they go through multiple trials of weaponcraft and training to survive the hostile wilderness of the northern steppes outside of Harrogeth by the base of Mount Ariat. Now, the Barbarians are descendants of the powerful ancient who was one of the first Nephilim named Bulkathos. Bulkathos, along with his companion, the ancient Vasily, became aware of dark prophecies where Baal and the other prime evils would seek to attack the worldstone, which they discovered was in Mount Ariat. As such, Bulkathos decided to unite his fellow clans and settle around the base of Mount Ariat and focus purely on martial prowess, striving to protect the worldstone from any threat, whether that's man or demon. Now, the canonical Barbarian from Diablo 2 remains unnamed, but we do know that he grew up in Harrogeth and was actually quite close to Mala, who we meet in Act 5 of Diablo 2, and her son, Banuk. Now, the Barbarian and Banuk had a falling out because the Barbarian wanted to leave Harrogath when he heard about the Dark Wanderer, wanting to preemptively stop evil from its tracks rather than waiting for it to attack Mount Area. Of course, unfortunately, him and his fellow heroes were not able to stop Baal before he destroyed and shattered the worldstone, and although it is unclear what he specifically did after the events of Diablo 2, Lord of Destruction, it is known that he was glorified in many songs and fireside tales among the various scattered clans of the Barbarians. Now, we spoke about the ancients of Bolkathos and Vasily learning of the Dark Prophecies, so next we're going to talk about the Druids. Now, the Druids were followers of the ancient Vasily, who is the companion of Bolkathos. Unlike Bolkathos, Vasily believed that in order to protect the worldstone, it is best to develop a spiritual oneness with the land. As such, Vasily gathered a group of his tribe's greatest warrior poets and shamans, and he retreated to the forests around Skosglen. There, him and his people established the Druid colleges where they trained to become one with their spirit and the spirits of the land, in preparation of the impending conflict and attack on the worldstone. During the arrival of the Dark Wanderer, the Druids realized that this was the call to action, and one of their order went and attempt to protect Mount Area from Baal. Unfortunately, although he was able to defeat Baal, the worldstone didn't survive the assault. Now, the Druid from Diablo 2 doesn't have a canonical name, and it's not quite clear what happened after the events of Diablo 2, but it is assumed that he returned to Skosglen to train the next order of Druids that appear in Diablo 4. Now, last but definitely not least is the canonical Paladin, and his name was Karthus. As much as it pained him, Karthus fought through swaths of his fellow Zakarum in Act 3, and he witnessed firsthand how corrupted his order truly was, having to down his own high council, which are the equivalent of cardinals in modern religions, and even the Khagan equivalent to the Pope in the Zakarum, which Mephisto chose as his vessel. Now, following these events, Karthus took the body of the Khagan that Mephisto chose as his vessel, named Sankakor. Now, Sankakor's corpse was still writhing with the hatred from Mephisto's possession. As such, he and a group of his fellow loyal paladins named Retinues, Matthias, Elazar, and Elodia all traveled to Hawazar, where they built the Black Tomb to house Sankakor's corpse. Upon building this keep, Karthus knew the extent of Mephisto's corruption within Sankakor's corpse, so he dismembered the corpse, built catacombs underneath the sarcophagus, and spread the body parts so they cannot be combined to spread Mephisto's foul hatred. Upon doing this, Karthus swore an eternal vigil with his fellow paladins, locking themselves within the Black Tomb, and you could hear this directly in a letter found in Diablo 4.
And my most trusted retinue, Elodia, Matthias, and Elazar, seal this place with ourselves inside. Though we fall to Mephisto's corruption, we shall not forget our duty. Even in death, we guard the body of Sankakor.
Speaking of Diablo 4, there is a side quest called Lost Legacy, where the Crusader Ksenia leads the Wanderer to help her cleanse and free Karthus and his paladin host Spirit, which they ended up succumbing to during their vigil. And speaking of paladins, I am hopeful that in the next expansion, we will be able to see one of our favorite holy classes return back into the fold. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoy Diablo lore videos, please consider subscribing, liking, and leaving a comment to help support the channel. And if you enjoy watching streams, be sure to give me a follow on Twitch, where I cover ARPGs and specifically their stories. Thank you for watching. Until next time.